Hey guys, in this tutorial, we're going to be drafting this particular dress. If that's what you want to see, then watch to the end. So I've gone ahead to get my basic bodies in full, and I've imputed my data when necessary. I also went ahead to trace it out in this particular. I just traced out the upper part of it, and I just manipulated the dart on what side to get my princess armhole seam. So from my waistline, I'll be marking 1 inch upwards. And from that 1 inch, I'll be marking 2.5 inches. And I'll go ahead to draw out my bust apart line between the dots, like so. I'll extend it downwards later. So I have to connect those 3 inches line to that bust apart measurement. And on the other side, I marked 1.5 inch upwards from my waistline. And from my hip line, I came down by 1 inches. And I'm going to be giving this an artistic design just so it looks like the one we are drafting. We want to recreate on that dress. I'll connect it to that line like so, and the other one, I'll go ahead to do the same and also connect it to that 1 inch line that is below the hip line. Okay. I just feel like the upper part is not really giving me that slanting. So I had to reduce it by 1/2 inch just so I just want to get the exact look. But you can play around with this. Just get the basics and you play around with it. So I just want to get that slanting effect. And yeah, that's what I'm actually looking for here now. So I think I'm okay with what I have now. And yeah, that's it. So I haven't done this now. I'll go ahead to draw in. I also I'm still trying to make this place look like slanting or whatever, but I think I'll just go ahead with it this way. I'll go ahead to draw in my slash lines just for a guideline when I'm slash and spreading. Yeah, just so I get a guide when I'm slashing and spreading. And this is what I have. So I haven't done this now. I'm going to be cutting out the whole of this part where this actual slash and spread started in order to kind of make this piece lower part different from upper part. The simple basic thing in this dress is this. It's actually a two-piece, but there is that inner stitching, and we'll see it as we continue in this video. So I'm gonna have to separate it like so. I'll put this aside and I'll work on the other one. Having In order for me to slash and spread, I'm going to extend my bust apart measurement all the way down to the hemline. Like so, I'll be extending it all the way down to the hemline. Now I'm going ahead to close up my dart. I want to measure my waistline. I had to label my waistline just so I don't get confused when I'm cutting on the fabric. So I had to close up my darts. I'm opening up the darts and I'm going to be closing it so that we'll get a perfect fit while we're spreading. Okay. And I haven't done this now. Go ahead to close up these darts. Okay. So I'm going with my cello tape now. As you're closing it, make sure your lines match. You drew these lines and they are supposed to be in line. So that is a kind of a guideline to help you. So I'm making sure that these lines are in line. Yes, I'm making sure that the lines that they match each other. That's going to help me to keep myself in track of what I'm doing. So I'm using my waistline here as a guideline and making sure it's in line. I'm taping it on, okay? So I'm slashing now. We're actually slashing from the side where we need the fullness to be added. I wanted to slash from the other side, but no. We're going to be slashing from the side where we need the fullness to be added. So I had to remove this very part. If you watch closely the dress we're making, there is this part on the side that looks like the bow was fixed from there. So I had to label where is side and where I'm going to join. And so I don't make mistakes when I'm cutting on my fabric also. I removed the tape and this is what it looks like. I had to label and then I'll set this aside and continue with my slash and spread. Now I'm able to see where I'm slashing and spreading, so I'll go ahead to slash and spread right away. You want to slash and spread on the lines that you marked for your guideline or somewhere close to it where you marked for your guideline. So I'm going ahead now to do that. Moving out to this place, I found out that my tape didn't get to this place. So I'll go ahead to also using those lines as a guideline. I'm going to be taping down and then I'll cut like so. Make sure these lines are they are in track. Okay, that's why it's a guideline. So I'm putting it down, okay? Making sure it's in line. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please hit the subscribe button right away and like this video because I'm going to be bringing pattern drafting tutorials in this channel on this channel, okay? So subscribe, like this video and leave a comment in the comment section. Thank you. So I'll be going ahead now to slash and spread the whole pattern. You want to slash and spread, on that line where you're going to be sewing. You don't want to extend it, okay? You want to make sure it's on that line where we just cut out. So for the other design that looks like a cut on the down part, which you can see from the dress, we're also going to be doing this to that very part also. And I'll go ahead with my tape to tape down where necessary, just so I don't lose any part of this pattern. And that's the shape. As you can see, it is no longer straight. It isn't straight. So that's the shape that we have. And I'll set this aside. So we're going to be working on our pattern that we slashed and spreaded. Because of that particular dart, which is still like, it's still bumped, I want it to lay flat. So I had to draw another style line guide and making sure that everything is into the very particular part where we removed that we're going to be stitching the bow to. Then I had to slash and spread it just so everything lays flat and nice. I hope this is quite understandable. So having done this now, this is what you should do. We are going to be taking an additional paper and putting it onto the very particular one that we've slashed and spread. We'll be opening it up for added fullness. I don't have any actual measurements to say I'm spreading by 2 inches, I'm spreading by 1 inch. I just have to eyeball it and know that, yeah, this is enough for a pleat. You don't want to overdo it because it's going to be very heavy, especially if you're using a heavy fabric. I actually used a cotton fabric for this tutorial. So if you're using a heavy fabric, don't overdo it. No matter the weight of your fabric, do not overdo it because it's not going to come out nice. I think from what I'm doing now, some parts where the darts fall into will open up naturally. Okay, some parts where the darts fall into will open up naturally. And some parts you need to open them up, like add the fullness by yourself. Like the very last slash and spread, that's the natural way it should open because of the dots that intersected there. And I think the other parts I had to add fullness by myself. Okay. So I'm going ahead now to tape all this down. I noticed that they weren't laying flat. Some places were like bumpy. So I had to remove them and make sure that they are all laid flat. Yes, because we're working on a flat pattern. So you don't want to have anything that is not well flat laid. So you want to make sure everything is laying flat. So you get your desired result. So yes, I'm making sure that everything is laid flat and nice. And yeah, putting it. like so. So I haven't done this now. I had to use an additional paper to add up to that very top layer, just so it's not hanging out like that. And I don't have any need for any cause for alarm. I have to make sure there's paper everywhere. Now I start folding like so. So I'm folding now, making the pleats or whatever it is like so. You only want to fold in the added fullness, and your exact pattern has to be on top. You only want to fold in your added fullness, okay? So I'm going ahead now to fold this pattern like so. It's very necessary you do this before you cut, so you know that you're cutting the actual place where you wouldn't be needing. Because if you just cut it out without doing this, you probably might cut where you would be needing. So you have to do this first before discarding or cutting out the part of the paper that you wouldn't need. And then having done this now, we're going to be cutting out the parts that we don't need. Following all the styles, following all the necessary patterns, the shape, just so we get the exact shape. And yes, this is what we have. So I'll go ahead to open this up and cut it up in a fabric, and I'll be right back. I just had to lay all the patterns together, and this is what it looks like. It actually came out nice. So we head over to cutting on the fabric and the sewing. I use the pen to mark where is the actual pattern and where to fold in. So I'm going to be folding in like so, based on what I marked, like so. The tiny places are the actual pattern and the bigger places are the spaces. So I had to use a needle and thread and secure this first before sewing it before going to the sewing machine to sew it out. And I'll advise you to do this also because it's going to make your work a whole lot easier. So I've gone ahead to cut off the needle and thread. And yes, this is what it looks like now. So going over to sew that of the upper bodies, there are two parts of this princess seam. One is on the waistline and the other one is above the waistline. So I'll go ahead to sew them, and having sewn them together, okay, I'll be using the bow for the upper bodies. I'll run a loose stitch rather, on the bow of the upper bodies, and I'll gather it. So I haven't done that now. I'm going to be stitching this bow on the mark that I gave. It's actually 1.5-inch mark. Looking from the actual dress, okay, from what we have in the actual dress. So I guess it should be like this. Yeah, that's the way it should be. So I had to mark 1.5 inches, and then that's what I came up with. And I think, yeah, that's pretty. It's okay. And I'll go ahead to sew the lower bodies. First, I'll go ahead to sew the lower bodies up to the upper bodies. And this part now is very essential. For that part that looks like it's lapped over, like the lower bodies is lapped on top of the upper bodies, while cutting my while cutting the skirt bodies, I had to make a join. I had to cut an additional top layer that is going to help with that overlap. And that is what I'm sewing now, okay? Like so, I marked it like so, just so it gives me that exact shape like so. As you can see what I'm doing now. Yeah. So I'm going ahead to stitch more. I'm actually just trying this for the first time. So some of the stitches that I'm doing, when I stitch, I have to check well to make sure that I'm in line. So you guys just roll with me. And it's actually a very interesting one. And I'm going to be sewing this all up also. So I haven't done that. I'm going to have to stitch this all up and also that side. So I'm heading over to the other part where it looks like there's a joining for the down bow. I also run a gathered stitch on the down bow. I was actually top stitching. Sorry, I was actually stitching it, but this is a gather and I'm not supposed to stitch. I had to loosen it up and rerun the loose stitch just for gather. There is no need stitching it up. Also on same horizontal line for the upper bodies, I have to make sure that same horizontal line for the upper bodies, I marked 1.5 inch for this very part, and I'm going to be gathering this bow on this part like so. And I'll sew also on 1.5 inch this gap or 1.5 inch space distance, whatever. So yeah, I'm sewing it all like this. If you have any question, just leave your comment in the comment section. Questions, suggestions, whatever it is you want to say, just leave it in the comment section. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel, okay? Thank you. So yes, we're going to be joining this to the main bodies like so. And I'm actually figuring out how I'm going to be joining this now. That's what I'm doing here, trying to figure out the easiest way to do this. And I found out that I should open up some part of the stitch that way so I can have an easy stitching, okay? And going from that very tiny part, I'm going to be stitching all the way down like so. So I'm going ahead now to stitch this part down like so. And yes, that's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. This is the final look of what we have. Bye and see you in my next video.